Hey, welcome to this video. We're going to be doing our similar videos to one I've already done, where we set up the Nord IKEv2 IPSec from our MikroTik, but we're going to go through the full configuration of the MikroTik as well. So I've got a brand new or recently reset IKEv2. We're going to configure the basic settings, so LAN, WAN, DNS, DHCP, and then we'll do that IKEv2. The only thing I'm not going to do in this one is the Wi-Fi on the HAP, because that's quite an involved process, and I've done many other videos about that. So yeah, check those out, and I've got a link to the playlist that has all those in there if you want to do the Wi-Fi as well. But we'll follow the setup. The router will be the same as I've done on other ones, and this, and then we'll add the IKEv2 IPSec tunnel to NordVPN. And we're going to route all of our LAN traffic across that. I'm going to use the well, I'll show you actually when let's have a look. What I'm going to do is this is the guide that I set up for my original video, link to here, where we just set up this tunnel across the two. We're going to use the we're going to connect to the UK. I'm currently in Australia, so we're going to route all of our traffic across the UK. UK is just that's where I'm originally from, as you can tell by my accent, but also it means that, you know, there's a very difference in terms of latency and stuff when we try and access the UK stuff, so I just thought it was a bit more interesting. Some people might use it for, you know, streaming content, which you can only get, which is geographically locked. I'm not advocating for that, but you know, some people might use it for that. But there are other services that you can only access from when you're inside of a certain country. So that's where it might be useful. But obviously, if you're doing it purely for security, then you would just do it for the country that you're in. So yeah, what we're going to do is we, following this guide, we're going to download the certificate from Nord. We will create our tunnel, and then we'll sort out our routing across the two. But before we do that, obviously we're going to set up our MikroTik itself from scratch. One thing I will say, if you don't have Nord, then yeah, there's a link on this website. You can click on this banner here, and what that'll do is I don't have internet access at the moment because I've reset my router that I'm connecting through, but that'll take you to a link where you can get Nord at a pretty good price at the moment. I think it still works out to that. It's a one-off payment, but you do get, I think, 30 days trial. And by trial, I mean you can basically email them and say you don't want it. I know a lot of companies you see on, if you click on the link on Instagram or something, they'll offer you that option, and it's really hard to get your money back. But I can vouch for Nord will refund you if you're not happy with it. But yeah, it's a one-off payment, but it works out really cheap, and then you're pretty much covered. You've got 10 devices you can use. All at once if you want, so you can use it on all sorts. You can have it on the Android, your Chromecast TV, on your laptop, your iPhone, and it also means that when you use the actual app itself, you can specify what apps within that device you actually want to use the VPN or not. So again, that's pretty handy, so you can have it on all the time. And yeah, and then you can just basically select if you want a particular app to use it or not use it, if you're going into different across to a different country or something like that. So yeah, there is the 30-day money back guarantee. So yeah, click on this link. Full disclosure, this is an affiliate link, so I will get a little bit of commission for that if you want to help support the channel. But I just want to be open about that fact. But yeah, I would recommend it regardless of the the commission side of it. So yeah, let's get going with our MikroTik to begin with. So if you've not seen any of my other full setup videos, I tend to use the same one every time, this HAP-AX, because I think it's a really good home or small business, small office router. So I've reset it back to factory, including the default configuration, just to give you a full end-to-end setup. So I'll do everything I've done in all the other ones except for that setting of the Wi-Fi in this one. So by default, we've got this default IP range it has, but I always like to connect to it via its MAC address. Out of the box, the older models of MikroTik came with the password would be blank, so just be admin and no password. However, newer ones, you will now find, if I've got a photograph of it here, on the bottom of the device is this this sticker, which has, by default, has this default config, which would have the wireless, and there's the PSK for that, but also this password here to log onto the device itself. So that's just one point of note. If you do reset the config to back to default, if you do it through the Winbox, you can select to have no default configuration, in which case your password is going to be blank. But if you do it using the reset pin on the outside, it's going to reboot into that default configuration, which will include this this password. So I'll just type that in now. 6 IKEv2. Okay. Now by default, you'll be presented this page, which basically tells you all the config that's on here by default. I always advocate to remove this config because you don't have full control if you use this config. So there may be something on here. MikroTik has built this config as a very generic sort of end user. People may not have a great amount of knowledge with using MikroTik, and if you don't, then it's probably quite a hard thing to use as a as a first-time user. But it does mean that you can then go out and buy one of these and use one of these, as comparable in sort of price to a more entry-level home device, and then you can just basically plug it in, follow the instructions. WAN goes in port 1. You've got your LAN already set up. You've got Wi-Fi set up. So as you would do if you went out and bought like a TP-Link or something like that. But yeah, always remove this config first, and that will tend to kick me out. But if not, I just close it and reopen it anyway. We can get rid of that now, because when we log back in, we'll find that our password is now empty. Get rid of these 2 boxes. There we go. So we've got completely no config. To test that, we can just open up the terminal. Oh, it's going to want to change our config. So before we do that, not our password. So let's just set a password. Otherwise, it's going to keep asking us. Let's close that. One thing to do, if you do set that password, when you open the terminal, it's going to ask you to log in every time. So the best thing to do is just close that and then log in again with that password you just set. Now it's going to not ask you. So then we're going to, what I was going to show you was just if you type export, that will basically export all the config. As you can see, we've got nothing here set other than my time zone. We have a completely brand new one. I'm going to use the same ports as it would do normally out of the box. So we've got Ether1 as our WAN, and I'm going to use 2, 3, 4, 5 as our LAN. Ether1 is connected up to my dev network, so that's going to be our internet access, but that could be from your ISP. There's various different configurations for that, so depending if your ISP gives you a VLAN tag or uses PPPoE, if it gives you a static IP address to set, but we're going to base on the example that we've got. We're plugging directly into the NTU and it gives us an IP address. So we'll start with the WAN by going to IP DHCP-Client, and we're going to add the DHCP-Client onto that Ether1. So we click Add DHCP, we select Ether1 interface, and we want to get peer DNS and use peer NTP, and then we want to add a default route. And then that'll actually give us an IP address. There we go. And if we go to IP route, it's giving us our default route. Okay. Now we're going to create our LAN. What we're going to do is to put all of these into the same LAN. We're going to create what's called a bridge, and this basically means that we can group from a layer 2 point of view all our interfaces together. So just give that a name, LAN bridge. Okay, and then we're just going to stick all of our ports in there. So Ether1, wrong button, Ether1, Ether2, 3. Sorry, I put 1 in there, didn't I? Not 1. I can go. I want to put 2, 3, 4, and 5. I will just say, I mentioned that when you're configuring this for the first time, I'm plugged into port 2. As you can see, they're in italics if there's got nothing plugged into them. Oh, that little I there means inactive. But if you get one out of the box and you plug into port 1 or whatever the dedicated internet LAN WAN port is, you won't be able to access it via Winbox or any other connection, because the idea is out of the box it's plugging into an internet connection, and that's publicly facing, and what it's doing is basically denying everything to access it via that interface. So it would only allow you to get to it via what it's dedicated as the LAN, which is the same as I've replicated here. So just, when you first configure them, just use 2, 3, 4, 5. Unless there's obviously more ports, but in my example I've only got these ones. So often the very first port is going to be what it uses for its WAN port, but it will say often on the outside or read the manual. So there's our LAN point of view. Now we're going to give it an IP address. So we've already got a dynamic one for our WAN, and then we can go all this. We're going to 192.168.0.1/24. Don't worry about the network because that'll populate that for us. We just select the LAN bridge. Okay, and there we go. So we've got LAN and we've got WAN set up. So we can close those now. And let's go for our DHCP server. So what we're going to do with this one, this is a very easy way to do it. You can obviously configure them individually, but I don't see any benefit in doing that. So always do this after you set up your IP addressing, because when you hit DHCP setup, you select the interface. We want LAN bridge, and then it will pre-populate most of this information for us. The gateway, it will use its own itself, and then here we can expand that a bit. And let's just decrease that range a bit, because I always like to give my DHCP portion a bit, leave some space for any statics we may have. Okay, DNS server, again I always use the MikroTik itself, and I'll show you the other step we have to do to get that working. And then we'll always increase the least time, because let's go 10 hours. Okay, and as you can see now, that's populated everything there for us, and it's the scope. So if you ever wanted to change that, like increase or decrease the amount of IP addresses it gives up, that's just set there. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're using this for DNS. That's still not going to be working, so I can show you that my MikroTik itself will have both internet access and google.com DNS, so it can do both, whereas my machine ping 1.1.1.1. Okay, so I know I can't ping the internet. I'm still missing a step there, so I'll leave DNS and come back to that because I want to demonstrate that. We go to IP Firewall, and then this is going to be our NAT. So NAT, if you're not familiar, network address translation, is going to take our private IPv4 address from our LAN, and it's going to, because there isn't enough IPv4 addresses in the world for every single device out there that needs internet access, our router has one of these public IP addresses. It's then going to take our internal network. It's going to basically what's called Masquerade here. It's going to change it, and it's going to send it out to the internet using the WAN IP address. So then that is then routable within the internet, so that it knows how to get back to us from when we request a web page. That web page gets sent back, hits the router then knows via a session table it keeps who asked for that information, then it sends it back on its local, so it translates it back. So it's basically translating it from local to public and then back again. If that makes sense. So what we do is we take chain is source NAT, we pick the interface it's going to go out of based on our routing table. So our routing table, as you remember, I set my WAN on Ether1, so that would have a default route pointing out to the Ether1 network. So that's the out interface. That's where the traffic's going to go out of, and the action is going to be Masquerade, as I mentioned. And that's all we need to do there. Okay, so now when I try that again, now I can ping, but now I still won't be able to ping. There we go, could not resolve. So if I do an NS lookup to my DNS server, in fact, I won't specify the DNS server because it'll tell me which one I'm using. so that it's trying to look up against that, but it can't resolve. However, if I do NS lookup and I specify another DNS server, it gives me the result. So, because this is my DNS server, the reason it's not resolving the DNS for me is we go to IPDNS. It's got its dynamic server, so that's how it can itself, the router itself, can resolve DNS. But we just need to tick this allow remote requests. So when we do that, basically what's happening is when you request a DNS, your IP, your machine sends out to its DNS server. It says, "Hey, I've got this domain. What's the IP for it?" It sends its IP back. If it doesn't know, if you're using an internal DNS, it will then look up on using its DNS, and likewise along the way. However, our MikroTik then is that's what that's basically doing. We're going to say to our MikroTik, "Hey, what's the IP address for google.com so I can route my traffic?" It's going to then say, "I don't have that, but let me ask my DNS server," and then it will pass that information back. Okay, but at the moment, without that allow requests, it's going to not allow me to ask it for a DNS. The reason I use the MikroTik itself is it can do basically it can cache the requests, but also we can add our own static ones here, and it becomes our own private DNS server without having to install or run a separate service on another machine somewhere. It's all in the one, so it's just a handy little feature I like to do. So yeah, we've now got internet access. We'll just confirm that. There we go. We have to ping it now as well. So we've now got internet access. I'll just also, as I mentioned, that link there. There we go. That's the price. Yeah, it's still pretty good value at the moment. So where were we? Back to MikroTik. So we've got internet access. That's all good. We've got a LAN. We've got a WAN. We've got sorted. Now, the next key step before we get onto the VPN tunnel is the firewall. So let's go firewall. Now we need to sort out our chains. So there's 3 chains. There's forward, there's input, and there's output. So very simple terms, the router, anything coming into the router or destined for the router itself is the input chain. Anything generated from the router going out is the output chain, and then anything passing through, so a PC connected on the LAN, it goes into the router, but it's not destined for the router itself. It's routing then onwards, so it's then going to pass through and it's going to forward that traffic through. So that's the forward chain. So that'd be LAN to WAN or LAN to LAN. That'd be remote access, but it would also include our things like we're doing, like DNS request to the device itself, and then that would be anything sort of services running on the MikroTik that would be talking to the internet. So what we're going to do is we're going to sort out our input chain, because what we don't want is this at the moment, although it's not technically because I'm behind my dev network, but if this was plugged straight into my ISP, for example, and I'm getting a public IP address that's routable across the internet, anyone from any country doing any sort of malicious stuff or not could then be hammering my IP. It would see my IP was responding, and then it would try all sorts of things. It would find out I was a MikroTik, and then it would try all the default passwords. It would SSH, it would try Winbox and all sorts. So what we want to do is completely stop that straight away. We don't want it to try and guess our passwords, because for example, I set my password on this as just admin, which obviously I wouldn't recommend, but this is a demo. But yeah, you could set a very simple password that was easily broken. That's why again, another security thing is always to use a strong password, but I'm sure you've heard that multiple times already. So what we do is we build our rules based on a deny everything, and then we build our allow rules above it, because the way it works is top down, and if it finds a match on its traffic, it will apply whatever action you set, and then it won't move on to any more. And if it doesn't match anything, it then just hits that explicit deny. So if you have a firewall, for example, like a FortiGate or a Paolo, that rule is in there by default. But because MikroTik is essentially a router, it wants to just route traffic, we then have to build that feature in there. So we will create a deny rule, but before we do that, I always set my allow rules first, just in case we're going to do, we want to lock down our LAN being able to access it. And then if you create a deny straight away, you potentially could just kill your access to it. It's not going to happen in this example because I'm only going to block stuff coming in from the internet, which is Ether1. So input coming in from Ether1, action accept, but what I'm going to do is accept it from a specific set of IP addresses. Now I don't actually have any set up, but I will just do it as an example. Say I have remote access from somewhere else. I've got a remote server, a work connection which has a static IP address I want to access my home or small business router from. All sorts of things. You could then you put that in here. I'm just going to use Google as an example. So we've created that allow list there under address lists. Now in our rule and our address list, we can then select that. So anything coming from that IP address from Ether1 is going to be accepted. You could just put that IP address in here, but that limits you to one IP, and then you'd have to have a rule per IP. Whereas this way, every time we want to add a new IP or the IP changes, you just have to change it here, and you never need to touch your rules. Okay. This one's not needed really for this example, but I thought it's just worth demonstrating before then we add our deny. So we select input, in interface is going to be Ether1, and then action drop. Okay, now the way I've set this is, yes, it's now technically enough to work, but what I would have done is killed my connection. Because what I'm doing is blocking everything from Ether1, regardless of what sort of traffic it is. So there's certain types of traffic which is going to make a request out and it's going to expect the answer back in. So UDP, for example, DNS, UDP 53. Now I'm using the MikroTik as my DNS server. It's going to make a request out to its DNS server. And then when that request comes back, that's going to get dropped. So I'll demonstrate that by doing the NS lookup again. See, timed out. So it's trying to make the request. Now what would actually be happening is if we open this rule up and then we just add the log feature, it's really good for debugging stuff, and we open up our logs. There we go, we're getting heaps of stuff coming back in. Just freeze that. And then somewhere in here will be UDP 53. That's all new stuff. We want to look for, there is. So my DNS server for my MikroTik is actually my development router. So as you can see, this is traffic coming into the MikroTik, but it's getting dropped because it is already established. So it's gone out, it's marked as established. So when it's coming back in, it's getting dropped. So the easiest way to do that is we could either have rules for everything we think we're going to need out and in. So we could have a rule to allow DNS, or we could allow everything from we could allow our DNS server in here, but we want to be a bit more smarter with it because we don't have to keep creating rules every time we change stuff on our network. So what we just do is in our drop rule, make sure that's our drop rule, we can untick that now. With this connection state here, we click here, and you see we've got this established option, and then this, if I leave it like this, it's going to drop all established traffic, or if we negate it here with this exclamation mark, we're going to drop everything that isn't established. Sorry, we're going to drop everything, that isn't established traffic. So if it's established, it won't get dropped. If it is, anything else will get dropped. That makes sense? So we okay that, and now we can do that NS lookup again. It's working again. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. So that basically gives us our secured firewall in just two simple rules. Okay, so now we're going to look at the firewall again when we come to do our tunnel. But for now, let's look at creating our tunnel. So to do this, what you're going to need to do is set up your Nord account. And then when you log into it, you'll be on this dashboard. You click on NordVPN on the left, and then you scroll down, and then we've got this manual setup. So you set up manually. And now here we can choose our country, which one we want. Like I mentioned, I was going to go for the UK. There we go. And there's our server, we can then click get configuration, select which one we want. We want IKev2IPSec, and then we want service credentials. Now every time we do this, this is going to send us, we need to verify our email. So we click verify email. It's going to send us an email, which I will just open. There we go. Pop that code in there that emails you. And there we go. That's going to give us our username and our password, which every time we go back to this, it's going to want us to confirm that again. So what I'm going to do is just copy these into a notepad for now. That's my username. I will copy the password. Okay. Now we can go back to server. Now this will go default back to our country every time. And although this server now is going to be different probably to the one that was there a second ago, it doesn't really matter which one we choose. I've never had that be a problem. So we're going to just want to know this name here. Okay, and we'll just put that in there as well. So we've got everything together. Right. So next thing we're going to do is, now we've got all the information we need, we can then go on our MikroTik and we're going to download the certificate. So we'll go to terminal, and again, all of these steps are in the in that guide I showed you, which there's a link to in the description, which I've just copied and pasted there. So it's basically going to fetch, which is going to download from that URL. Okay, finished, downloaded, and then what we do is then we just use the import feature. Import and give it that name. Oh, sorry, from that name, so it's imported. So then if we go system certificates, there we go, it's in there. So we've done our certificate bit. Now we can set up our IPSec. So we go IPSec. Okay, so we're going to start with our profile, which is there. So add a new one. I'll just call this NordVPN _UK because that's where it's for. SHA-1, auto. All this can pretty much be default. Yep, don't need to change anything here. She's just going to give it a name. As you can see, it's the same as the default one, but I always recommend if you ever create an IPSec tunnels, and always create the individual sections from scratch. Don't use the default ones, because if you're then using another protocol like L2TP, which uses IPSec as well, you might find that if you've made any changes to the default ones, then you could break something else. So it's easier if you just create new ones from scratch every time. So next thing, proposal. So we can just call again. We can call everything the same regardless of what it is. Again, everything here is pretty much default. The only thing we're going to do is no, just that. Make sure I've got the right group. So, yep. So again, just give that one a name. Now we're going to set our policy. No, we're not, sorry, before we do policy, we're going to do groups. And we're going to give that a name again. A lot of this, handle it, which pretty easily is just the default stuff. So we're just naming stuff at the moment. Now we can do our policy, where we're going to set on our general tab, we're going to select tick this template. Okay, we're going to select our source is going to be everything, and our destination is going to be everything, because like I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to route all of our LAN traffic across it. And then our group is going to be that NordVPN one. And then we hit the action tab and we just change the proposal to be that other one we created. Okay, so that's pretty much, if you don't hit the template, these menus don't appear. So make sure you hit template first. Okay, and now address list. So the address list is what's going to control. So although we're allowing everything across our tunnel, we need to specify what by using these address lists. So we go to IP Firewall, and then just like we created our allow list here, we'll create another one. We're just going to call it local, and we specify the LAN we want to route across. So if I did have multiple LANs on here, I could specify which one here. Okay, and now we go. Now we've done that bit, we can go back to do our mode config. Add that again. You guessed it, NordVPN _UK. It doesn't matter what name you give it, so completely up to you. Untick responder, so it means it's going to pull a lot of the parameters from the server, being Nord, and we want to basically say the source address list is going to be local, that one we just created, so our local LAN. Okay, now we're ready to do our peering, which is where we're going to need that information we just grabbed earlier. So under name, again, NordVPN UK. Address, that's going to be that server address. Okay, and then we want to select our profile, it's Nord UK, and mode IKev2. Okay, and now once we've done that, we're going to need to set our identities. So again, that's going to be our username and password. So peer, it automatically picks it because it's the only one. We want to use EAP. We're going to select our certificate as that one that, none for certificate. We want to set our username and password here. So I'm going to copy these ones across. Okay, and then policy group, Nord, that one we created. Auto for everything else, remote ID is fine. Mode config, Nord, policy, port strict. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. Again, use that guide. It's a lot easier to follow than trying to watch me what I'm putting in if I'm going too quick. Certificate missing. Oh, sorry. That's why it's asking me for certificate. Because I need to change that to MS chap. There we go. Cool. Right. Let's go into our policy. Right, okay. One thing, we're not going to be... oh no, we are established. I was going to say we need to allow it for the firewall, but again, that's where allowing that established traffic comes into play, because normally we then need to allow on the input chain the IKev2 and IPSec ports and protocols, but because it's being started from the MikroTik itself, it's able to go through that established rule, the traffic coming back. So yeah, we should have an active, active. So if we ping, there we go. So if you look at those, this is why I want to use the UK one, because as I mentioned, I'm in Australia. That is 300 milliseconds. We're going literally to the other side of the world. If I was to go to my identities and stop that, that's going to kill my... Oh, did I accidentally hit? No, I thought I removed it there. That's just killed my tunnel. So now if I... There you go. 20 milliseconds. So again, my identities. Start that up again, wait for that to start. Okay, so again we can trace route. There we go, jumps over the tunnel. And we're going all the way to the Nord server in the UK. London probably. So then if we also go onto here, we can do a my IP. Yep, that's because I'm using guest mode. There's my public IP, which is, I know, is different to mine. But if we go onto one of these, what's myip.com, it's obviously going to be slow to load because it's got a long way to go and come back again. Check in, and this should give us, there we go, it says I'm in London. Okay, so yeah, so that's it. That's our full configuration with our NordVPN. If, like I mentioned, if you did obviously want some guidance on the Wi-Fi side of it, please check out one of those other videos I've done for setting that up. This is a carbon copy of the way I set them up in the other video. It's just in the other ones I've included the Wi-Fi, whereas this one I've included the VPN as well. So if you've got any questions, any queries, anything doesn't work, please click on the links below to the website, and then you can comment on the article in there, or you can comment on these videos. Yeah, if you've got any ideas for content, if you want a video made because you tried to do something and it just doesn't work and you're not quite sure, I try and make videos that are both full configurations of a certain example, but also we'll do something more specific. So I'll have a pre-configured router and then I will just configure a part of it. But sometimes it's you understand a bit of it, but the other bit doesn't work. You're not sure why, because you won't have configured yours exactly how I did mine. So yeah, if you do have any queries or help with that, let me know, and I'll do a full long guide, or I can even do a live stream where it's just me and just configuring everything from scratch. So yeah, hopefully that's clear enough for you. But yeah, like I say, comment or like, subscribe is always a help. And if not, I'll see you on the next one. So thanks.